All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Whitney Smith. I'm so happy to be here with you. I am the Senior Director of Corporate Partnerships here at GFN. And we are just can't wait to dive into this webinar with you. So this is an opportunity to reflect on the achievements of the past year, share some insights from our 2024 annual report, and spotlight some of the incredible programs and partnerships that are helping us in our mission to reduce food insecurity and food waste globally. We're so grateful to have you as part of this journey. We hope today's session inspires some new ideas and opportunities for collaboration. So here's a brief look at what we have planned for today's session. I'm going to kick things off with a welcome and go over our agenda here. Next, we'll watch a brief video that captures our mission to nourish people and planet together. Then our amazing CEO, Lisa Moon, will present highlights from our annual report, including some of the amazing impact metrics from 2023 and the story behind our new tagline. We'll hear from the amazing Feni Amondi, who will spotlight agricultural recovery, one of our featured initiatives, and Esther Carzaga, who will share a powerful case study from our partners at BAMX. And then finally, Stephanie from Kellanova will join us for a discussion about the role of partnerships in achieving our mission. Last, we'll close the session with a call to action, inviting all of you to join us in helping to scale our efforts to nourish people and the planet. So thank you so much for being here today. And now to get us started, let's go ahead and play the video.
Ẹ̀gbọ́n you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to Whitney for kicking us off. So my name is Lisa Moon, and I am very fortunate to lead the Global FoodBanking Network. And as Whitney mentioned, today we just wanted to give you a sense of how some of your partnership and your investment is making a difference around the world, and particularly in communities that are partnering with farmers to recover surplus product. I wanted to start out and just give you kind of a bit of an update on what we have been doing at GFN. As many of you know, GFN is an international development organization that is connecting grassroots food banks in more than 50 countries, working to nourish people and the planet together. And as we'll see on the next slide, food is an essential need. And this is something that, of course, we all are aware of. But yet, in spite of a very productive food system, we still have about 700 million people worldwide struggling daily to meet their basic food needs, and more than 2 billion people worldwide are facing some form of food insecurity. And the great irony of this is that we actually produce enough food for everyone to have enough, yet a third of all of that food is being lost and wasted. And I think one of the things that has just become much more apparent, especially in recent years, is that much of the food that is going to waste is not just edible food, but it is highly nutritious food, such as fruits and vegetables, legumes, and pulses. And just in the hunger situation that we're in, this is just a travesty. The other big challenge, though, about producing all of this food that ends up being discarded is that it has a pretty significant environmental impact. We know that the resources that are put in to grow and produce that food are lost and wasted, but also when the food is discarded, it is responsible for creating 8 to 10% of total greenhouse gas emissions. Now, food banking, though, is a solution that brings these two challenges together. So, food banks are, as many of you know, rescuing nutritious surplus food from across the food production and supply chain, and then working many times with local charitable agencies to make sure that this gets directly to people in need. One of the things that is so amazing about the food banking model is that it is a community-based grassroots interventions. And a lot of times, I think, when you think about these amazing local organizations, we're really focused on how they're changing that community. But what we love to see also at GFN and have the advantage of seeing is that when we roll up this local impact, it has an amazing a global story and a global impact on some of these big challenges that we are facing. So this is really where GFN comes in. Since 2006, we have been uniting food banking organizations. Today, it spans more than 50 countries to help accelerate the impact that these organizations can have at the local level in both tackling hunger and reducing food loss and waste. This slide I know looks really complicated, but it is kind of around our theory of change. And what GFN is looking to do is how can we use a network to both share knowledge, make sure that we're investing in capacity building, unlock innovation, and also connect global and regional partners with local players to help accelerate the impact that food banks are having. And food banks are really doing, they do many things, but we're really focused on how they do three things really well. And that is delivering more nutritious food for more people, creating strong and resilient communities that are well positioned to respond to disaster, and also doing all of this while reducing food loss and waste. And as you can see, we are working towards some big, audacious goals, and that includes increasing food access for 50 million people by 2030. So how are we doing on this goal? I wanted to give a brief update on that. As you'll see on the next slide, last year, the network collectively served more than 40 million people facing hunger, delivering 1.7 billion meals approximately. And this really amounted to avoiding 1.8 million metric tons of CO2e. So there is a significant impact. And I think what this tells us is that that GFN and food banks can do so much more as we're thinking about how do we get to 2030 and beyond and tackle some of these big challenges. As you'll see on the next slide, thanks to partners like you, the impact of GFN and its members has been growing now for more than a decade. Not only is every dollar invested yielding a meaningful impact in terms of providing immediate food relief, what we've also learned is that it actually creates $4 to $7 in social impact. And this really gets into the work food banks are doing to improve food access for many over the long term, tackling both food insecurity as well as nutrition insecurity. We also have learned over the past couple of years that food banks are working with tens of thousands of agencies that are providing really valuable services to people in need. And about 22% of those agencies are directly working to improve economic mobility and working towards a day where clients don't need access to the food bank anymore. We believe that the most sustainable and transformational change happens through local leadership and at the grassroots level. And so that's really why, as the network has grown and evolved, we have really focused and remained true to local action and localization. over the coming years, we're going to be focusing at GFN around four key pillars that really bring about change. One is thinking about how do we accelerate the work of food banks that are in high need communities. These are communities where there is a significant amount of chronic hunger and food insecurity, and also communities that are going to be disproportionately impacted by natural disasters or climate change disasters. The second pillar that we're really thinking about is how do we drive innovation at the food bank level, and doing so in a way that builds out supply chains in a sustainable way, leveraging technology, leveraging new models to increase food recovery and redistribution, and also tackle hunger at scale. The third pillar, which we're going to talk about today, is our partnerships with farmers and rural communities. Agriculture is one of the leading providers of fresh fruits and vegetables to food banks around the world, and we are so fortunate today that we're going to have two of our colleagues, Fenny and Esther, talking specifically about what this work looks like on the ground. And the final area of focus for us is really around how can food banks be leveraged to spur bigger food system transformation. And we're doing a lot of work around thinking about how we can be part of the bigger change in reducing food loss and waste long term, first through prevention, and then what can't be prevented through redistribution. And then also thinking about how food banks can be advocates for people facing hunger and improving their lives long term. And all of this, of course, is to support our North Star goal of improving food access for 50 million people by 2030. So now I actually want to turn it over to my colleague Fenny Omundi, and she's going to talk a little bit about the amazing work that she is leading on agricultural recovery. Fenny.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, all of you, for creating the time to join us on this very important conversation. Just like Lisa mentioned, we live in a world of contrasting realities, but we certainly can play our part in making things better for those in need. While one in every 11 people faces food insecurity, which is limited access, adequacy, and nutritional value of food, nearly one third of all food that is produced is wasted before it reaches our consumers, which contributes to 10% of global greenhouse emissions. However, there is hope through food banking. Like Lisa just mentioned, food banking is a proven solution that simultaneously addresses hunger and climate change by reducing food waste and redirecting surplus food to those who need it the most throughout the supply chain. Now, agricultural recovery is certainly a rapidly growing area of food sourcing for most food banks, offering significant potential to salvage large volumes of nutritious food while also reducing food loss and waste upstream in the supply chain, at the farm gates and in markets majorly. This in turn contributes directly to climate action. This is essential work that really food banks within the Global Food Banking Network do. Spanning more than 50 countries, food banks in the network employ diverse approaches and models to recover fresh produce from farms and markets, tailored to the local context and defined by various factors, cultural, social, and political factors. Now, given the fast-growing nature of agricultural recovery and the diversity of models within the network, there is an immense opportunity for innovation. At the same time, agricultural recovery programs face critical challenges, including perishability of fresh produce, the challenge of preserving nutritional value of the food, and time constraints, likely due to logistics and as a result of the need to distribute through extensive geographical areas. All of which really present an opportunity to invest in scalable solutions with the ultimate goal of delivering the highest quality and highest food with the highest nutritional value to communities that the food banks serve. The Agricultural Recovery Hub provides knowledge sharing support, targeted technical assistance, and best practices to help food banks optimize their agricultural recovery programs, whether they're just starting or scaling up. These efforts aim to recover and redistribute more fresh and nutritious food to communities that food banks serve. Now, food banks throughout the
Thank you so much. I think Fenny, who is joining us from Nairobi, Kenya, is having a bit of a connection issue. And so while we wait for her to come
first,
back, oh, go ahead, Fenny. Thank you. Okay, I think that Fenny is going to be reconnecting to the webinar, but one of the things that we really wanted to share with you all is just about how the work on agriculture in particular is something that is spanning many markets across the GFN network. While we wait for Fenny to reconnect, though, I would actually wonder and suggest that we move on to have a colleague who is joining with us from Bancos de Alimentos, Mexico, or BAMEX. BAMEX has one of the largest agricultural recovery programs within the Global FoodBanking Network membership, and Esther is a national manager of agricultural partnerships. BAMEX is feeding in its modeling to the Agricultural Recovery Hub that is based in Nairobi and has been one of our leading partners in sharing best practices with members around the world on how to partner with farmers and make sure we can increase the amount of fruits and vegetables available to our network members. Esther, thanks for being with us. Over to you.
Thanks to you. Hello, everybody. Can you show yeah, thank you. BAMEX is the network of food banks in Mexico. We are 59 food banks, and last year we have recovered 1,700 tons of food. But this may seem a lot of food, but it's really not. As we can see in these numbers, Mexico is the horn of abundance, and that was said by Humboldt many years ago. In 2023, Mexico produced 34.5 million tons of produce, only produce, no dairy or fishing, only produce. So if we could save 10% of these fruits and vegetables that are now wasted, we could recover more than 3,000 tons every day. So I think that we have all these poorness in Mexico because in our abundance, we have became, the poverty has become part of the landscape, and this is not fair. And how do we do this work? I'm gonna show you yeah. We recover food from retailers and main markets, but this food is in the limits of the shelf life. So we have to do a lot of work to recover and distribute it in good conditions. We also recover from clients, brokers, and customer rejections all around Mexico and in the borders. We also work with a lot of agribusinesses, greenhouses, and exporters. And this is the best group we can work with because they are able to deduce the invoiced taxes, the deductible taxes we give them. And we also offer them the Red BAMEX trademark and social and environmental responsibility alliances. So we work together with them, with the farmers near them or their workers also. And of course, we work with small farmers. This group has not enough money to pay the labor of harvesting this food, so they abandoned it in the fields. And we have created a revolving fund to help all the food banks in Mexico to recover and pay the logistics of this food, distribute it, and once they have distributed, they return the money to the fund so we can continue recovering from these small farmers. And this is the best food we can have. You can see these pictures, and this is really great food. And what do we need? I want to show you all we need. Of course, we need a lot of things to achieve our goals. We are planning to help at least 5 million people in 2028. So we need a lot of logistic alliances, vehicles, infrastructure, not only warehouses, also refrigeration chambers, lifts, racks, sorting vans, washing machines, bins, plastic boxes, all the equipment we need to recover and distribute this food and to store it in good conditions. And in the future, we will have to need money to operate, of course, and also to process these surpluses because it's unable to distribute it in fresh. It's too much. So we have to process this food in order to increase the shelf life and also to distribute it to places and also to other countries that may need this food. And of course, we need to be conscious that this is not only the work of food banks, it's the work of everybody together. And I will follow. I want to tell you that I think that investing in food banks is a very good business. We have a social recovery of 1 to 50. Contributing to reducing hunger becomes in opportunities to heal people, physical and emotionally. If we gave them the opportunity to have the food, they will return to their productive lives, and they may become your clients too. If we have healthy children and we nurse in the first stage of development of these children, they will have the chance to study and learn, and we will save them from the struggles and the misery they have been born just because they born in another side different from ours. We will have less pollution and greenhouse emissions and decelerate the climate change, which affect all of us. We will give fair incomes to small farmers, and this will guarantee food production for everybody. 2/3 of the food is produced by them. If they lose everything, they will not continue producing food for us. And of course, you can make a lot of social marketing for your companies, and this will become higher sales and committed clients. So everybody will be living in a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Esther. And I just think that what you and others at BAMX have done is very innovative in terms of how you're partnering with farmers, obviously partnering with commercial farmers to make sure that surplus that is in the fields or at the farm gate is not going to waste, but also thinking really innovatively about how we can add value and be supportive of small scale farming families who are often regrettably facing hunger themselves. Fenny has reconnected, and I want you to return to her just because, specifically in the context of GFN's work on agricultural recovery. We have food banking organizations like BAMX that have been involved in agriculture now for more than a decade. But what we have seen over the past 5 years is that donations from farmers and surplus from farming is one of the most important food categories that is being rescued. Over the past 2 years, GFN has been investing across 10 markets in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and in Latin America to support, a stronger connection between farmers and food banks. And so what I love about what Fenny is going to share right now related to Rise Against Hunger Philippines and our partner Food Banking Kenya is some of the innovative ways that food banks are thinking about strengthening that relationship. So Fenny, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And that's precisely what I'd like to demonstrate, how food banks are creatively navigating the agriculture recovery space to ensure that they are constantly recovering large volumes of highly nutritious food, not only from farms, but also from markets. I'll speak about two examples from the Philippines and from Kenya. So in the Philippines, I'll start with the Philippines. So in the Philippines, where an estimated 50% of all crops that is harvested every year is either lost or wasted, Rise Against Hunger has established a mini food bank at the Nueva Vizcaya trading terminal, which is in the northern part of the country, which is the largest trading post in the Philippines, handling significant volumes of fresh fruits and vegetables commercialized by farmers and aggregators. This presents obviously an important opportunity, not only for the food bank, but also for the farmers too, as you will see shortly. About 500 metric tons of fresh and edible produce remains unsold daily from this trading terminal, often due to market requirements or the produce failing to meet these market standards or requirements. Now, this year alone, between Q1 and Q2, Rise Against Hunger recovered about 600 metric tons of surplus produce in a pilot barter program at the trading post, 100% of which was distributed to local public schools in Nueva Vizcaya. Now, comparatively, you will notice that there is a significant opportunity to grow this barter program that the food bank has with farmers to recover even more of the 500 metric tons of fresh and edible fruits and vegetables that remains unsold daily from the trading post. Now, the barter process is an interesting way that the food bank works with the farmers, allowing farmers to exchange unsold surplus produce for shelf-stable products provided by the food bank. Now, farmers uh, often, benefit from backhaul or logistics as they can transport high-value products to sell to their farming communities. At the same time, farmers also benefit directly from exchanging unsold surplus produce um, with high value or shelf stable products that they often would have otherwise bought. Now, this approach holds great potential for scaling, including by onboarding more farmers and mapping out more beneficiary communities around the trading post for more effective distribution of recovered produce. So this is an example of an innovative way that the food bank in the Philippines has found a way of creating great value for farmers, but at the same time recovering surplus produce and serving the community around the trading post. In Kenya, Food Banking Kenya has significantly grown in its agriculture recovery program, now recovering 90% of its fresh produce from over 600 smallholder farmers and 12 commercial farms and packhouses as well as markets. Smallholder farmers who produce over 70% of all food that is consumed in Kenya present an opportunity to recover a variety of um, different fruits and vegetables, albeit in small volumes across wide geographical areas, presenting both a challenge and an opportunity for the food bank. To create value for these farmers, Food Banking Kenya employs several strategies such as bartering shelf-stable products for fresh produce donations, providing agronomic and offering capacity building opportunities through third parties such as Agrico East Africa. Now, in this sense, the food bank therefore creates value not only through the bartering system, but also by providing opportunities for capacity building to increase yields for the smallholder farmers who are an essential partners to the food bank. Now, despite the widespread challenges of farm locations, the food bank has ensured field efficiency by maintaining a minimum pickup volume thresholds. Fresh produce below this threshold is often consolidated at rural depots and dehydrated, which then reduces the logistics cost of having to transport very low volumes of recovered fresh produce. Additionally, Food Banking Kenya uses a virtual food banking platform, Foodiverse, to optimize scheduling, pickups, and redistribution of fresh produce to local communities. For example, fresh produce recovered from over 30 markets in and around Nairobi is managed by this platform, where donations are scheduled and directly assigned to beneficiaries. The platform also calculates in real time the total donations, kilograms of food recovered, and equivalent meals served and emissions avoided as soon as the donations are made by the platform. Now, these examples that illustrate how food banks are creatively innovating their processes to recover even more food from farms and markets, thereby nourishing people on the planet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fenny. Really appreciated that overview. We also wanted to make sure that we incorporated the perspective of a partner. So all the work, obviously, that food banks do, both on agricultural recovery, as well as all the community impact is made possible due to partners and investors, like people joining on this call. And we are really privileged today to have Stephanie Slingerland with us. Stephanie is the Chief Philanthropy Officer for Kellanova and has been a critical partner to GFN for many years now, and food banks around the world. Stephanie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you all today and to talk a little bit more about the partnerships that Kellanova, formerly Kellogg Company, has enjoyed with Global FoodBanking Network since the very beginning as a founding partner of GFN. So Where I'd like to start today is just kind of backing up a little bit to speak to Calanova and our work in the food security space and what that looks like. Our program is called Better Days, and when we talk about Better Days, we're really looking at how to advance sustainable and equitable access to food. This really started in supporting traditional hunger programs, which is, of course, why we've been partnering with GFN since the very beginning. But in recent years, we've taken a broader look at what it means to support hunger programs and the broader impact across food systems. And so what we look at is 4 key areas coming together to impact access to food. It's not just about supporting the hunger programs, but we also look at the sustainability pieces of that work, which is why I'm so glad we're having this conversation today that's bringing light to the impact around climate change, because we know the significant impact of climate and what that means for food systems and food access. And we know that then that has an important impact on the well-being of communities. And so that's a portion of our initiative, and ensuring that equitable access as well. And the reason why Global FoodBanking Network is really a transformative partner for us is because it's one of the few global partners that we have that are looking across all of these areas: hunger, sustainability, well-being, sustainable access, equitable access, in impacting communities that can partner with us in really meaningful ways. I've highlighted some here. Obviously you can see we've invested, $5.8 million in supporting Food Bank Network, since our partnership began in 2006. And it comes to life in 4 key ways that I've highlighted here. Of course, through those food bank partnerships, we have food bank partners in 30 countries, supporting the important work that food banks are doing each and every day to increase access. And our employees are very engaged in these efforts as well, volunteering, hosting meal packing events and food drives and all of those great things. And a key way that comes to life during times of critical need is, of course, through disaster relief. So ensuring that we're helping to provide food access to those who need it most when they're facing those, serious circumstances, and helping to provide support in times of crisis. There's 2 really key pieces, though, that I want to highlight as part of today's conversation. And that's around the child feeding program partnership we have with Global Food Banking Network, and how that connects to the food waste reduction conversation that we've been having today. And thank you to Fenny and Esther for highlighting the important work that you're doing. And I want to give a special shout out to Bamix and Esther. I had the privilege of visiting with the food bank in Mexico City earlier this year in March, and just amazing operation and work that you all are doing there. And we're so thankful to be partnering with you in this work. So let's take a deeper dive in looking at how we think about how food waste reduction and child feeding programs connect to one another. It might not seem, on the outset that those 2 things are connected, but this is why we appreciate this transformative partnership with Global Food Banking Network. Because as we think about sustainable and equitable access to food, they have come alongside us to think innovatively about how we address this issue. And so what we've done this year in programs around the world, you can see some highlights there in that graphic on the screen. We have supported child feeding programs through GFN for many years, ensuring that kids get access to the food they need. We've done research. We're doing some more in partnership with Global Food Banking Network that really demonstrates the importance of these programs for children, not just only from a physical nutrition standpoint, but the social, emotional benefits that these programs provide for students and children as well. Helping them be more grounded, helping them have more positive outcomes in schools. In many markets, it helps keep kids in school. So we've been working together for many years on that space. But this year, as we took a look at all the great work that's happening from a food recovery standpoint, and as you can see there, our commitment to food waste reduction, we spoke with GFN about how these things come together between this food waste reduction piece and our child feeding program work. And we this year implemented a climate smart meal solution program. And we're specifically looking at how this food recovery work that's been highlighted as part of today's presentation can then go into the school feeding programs and benefit school feeding programs. And it helps address so many assets then of what we're talking about across that sustainable and equitable access to food. We're thinking about it in a climate smart way that's reducing food waste, which we know has a positive impact on GHG reduction. It's helping to ensure access and well-being for students and for families and getting access to that food, which supports overall equitable access. And as Lisa said, many of these communities themselves feed others before they feed themselves. And so how can we look at that in a really holistic way? And we've been very appreciative to the partnership with Global FoodBanking Network for helping to realize this vision and help us achieve our strategic work in, not only feeding people in need, but our commitment to food waste reduction. And we know the positive impact that has from a climate perspective as well. So we look forward to the, opportunity to continue that discussion. Thank you for having me as part of today's, great work and, just great legacy and partnership with GFN since 2006. So thank you, Lisa.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that. And we just so appreciate Kellanova's, just commitment. I mean, not just the GFM, but just to communities across the world. For sure, your product is amazing and shows up in so many places in our network. So thank you so much for the partnership. We have some time for questions. So I would encourage everyone to please put your questions into the chat. We're going to have all of our speakers today kind of come back on camera if they're able. Penny, it's great to see you. And we'll take some of the questions from those that are logging in. So I have the first question, Fenny, I'm going to send to you. And it really builds on what Stephanie had just said, which is this connection between kind of agriculture and school meals. And I wanted to just ask you, how are you seeing food banking organizations that are really involved in school feeding programs, whether it be midday meals or breakfast programs, linking their agricultural recovery work to those programs? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. There's a very interesting intersection between agriculture recovery and school feeding programs. And what we're seeing across the network really is that food banks with school feeding programs are slowly moving towards the direction of providing wholesome meals that are highly nutritious. We see that varying levels of partnerships with governments and with other organizations to provide or to support school feeding programs. I think food banks are also making very deliberate efforts to include into the food breakfast programs, for example, really highly nutritious food that is in most cases recovered from markets from market and farms, which is great to see because for some food banks in the network, for example, Food Bank Australia, are making very kind of giving. These are very keen, paying a very keen attention to how they design their breakfast program. For example, they kind of have an index of the nutritional value of the food that they provide in the school feeding program. So that kind of indicates the direction or the focus that that food banks across the network are having to as far as school feeding program is concerned. In some cases, for example, in the Philippines, like I just mentioned, 100% of the food that is recovered from markets and farms go to school feeding programs, which is really encouraging because, like Esther rightly mentioned here, intervening with the right level of nutrition for kids at the earliest age is perhaps the most important work that we can do. So there's great work that is being done there. I like the intentionality that food banks have in including this highly nutritious food from agriculture recovery in their school feeding programs, and obviously the support from government and partners is certainly really encouraging.
Okay, thanks, Penny. I think too that what has been so transformational also about the agriculture piece is that you now have a reliable supply of surplus vegetables and fruits. So I know, for example, within Food Banking Kenya, Food Forward South Africa, many of our partners that are in Africa, in addition to providing kind of that whole grain component of the school meals, there's always 1 or 2 servings of vegetables on the side. And I think that we're going to see more programs evolving to include that over the next several years because of the rise of donation from this particular product. Esther, I wanted to talk with you just because I thought your presentation was so interesting about how BAMX is kind of growing and changing. And I wanted to ask, as you're looking at the agricultural work that BAMX wants to be doing, what do you think is the biggest opportunity over the next 3 years? I think you're muted.
Thank you, Lisa. But I don't know why the camera is not opened. Maybe
It is. We can see you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of fresh food in Mexico, and I think it's not able for us to distribute it all in fresh. So we have to start thinking of processing it. We had an experience this year. We made an study about broccoli stems, for example. In one point in Mexico, no more than 50 kilometers around, we can recover more than 1,000 tons a week of broccoli stems. So if we could make soups or purees or just cooked broccoli stems, we can distribute it for more than 1 year all around the country without refrigeration. So I think we have to start to think about this. And of course, we have to increase our facilities to recover and distribute food also. We need warehouses and a lot of equipment that, of course, if the audience has something they are not going to use anymore, we can receive it in donations too, not only food.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Esther. Thank you. The next question I'm going to ask Stephanie to respond to first, but it is, what are the best ways you are engaging your produce donors and vendors? And I know we're talking about produce, so I can go to Fenny next. But this question, Stephanie, is around, are donors motivated to donate solely for tax deductions and social responsibility credits? And so maybe, Stephanie, you could address the second part of the question first, and then maybe over to you, Fenny, to talk about some of the best practices on engagement with produce and vendors.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from a corporate perspective, many of us in the food sector obviously have goals around food access. And so the food donation piece is a critical part of that. And so yes, we do get tax incentive and thing for that type of work. But I would say it's also core to who many of us are in terms of food organizations. We're here to feed people, and we recognize that some people don't have access as they should. And so that's part of, what we really are looking to do, and why important partnerships like GFN help make that happen. And, it's not just even surplus food. We've even been taking food banks into our plants and looking for, opportunities for additional food that can go. And that can even come back to some of the ingredients. We don't even want if for some reason we don't use an ingredient, we don't even want that to go to waste. And if we can give that through the food banking network, then that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. We actually have a really interesting project with the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. It's called the Global Food Donation Policy Atlas, and we can put it in the follow-up to the session, where we're taking a look at what are the incentives and disincentives at the country level to be donating surplus product. And the reality is that most countries do not offer tax incentives for donated product. In some places, it's actually far cheaper to throw your food away than to donate it, especially if there's a disincentive like a VAT tax having to be paid on donation. I think what we are really seeing across our network, though, is that companies are very motivated to be reducing waste. Of course, the most important thing you can do from a corporate side is to prevent this from happening. But the reality of our food system is that there's surplus, kind of baked into the system, and food banks can be partners to those companies in terms of taking that nutritious surplus that's still edible and redistributing it. And so a big part of our work has been, how do we become a better partner to food producers, whether they be farmers, manufacturers, or retailers? And then how do we also explain the impact of that surplus to really make the case stronger as to why you should donate as opposed to discard? And part of that is the social impact, but then also what is the environmental impact? And so we've had a project over the past 18 months to get much more rigorous about how we are able to calculate, CO2e emissions avoided through donation, including methane emissions avoided, and what are some of those sustainability benefits if a company or producer or farmer chooses to donate instead of discard. Benny, do you want to comment at all in terms of like how you're seeing food banks engage well with producers, whether they be commercial farmers or small scale farmers, because it's different strategies for both? Thanks.
Yeah. Certainly, there are different strategies for both, but what I see as consistent is relationship building is certainly a key part or central piece of engaging partners or engaging donors, whether they're small scale producers or commercial farms. I will talk about a little experience I had in Barmex, and I think it kind of really just solidifies this example of food banks investing so much in relationships. There are two pieces to the relationship management. So one, there are farmers who certainly are not aware of what they could do with their surplus produce. In other parts, on the other hand, the farmers who certainly are aware that they could donate, but they do not have the financial capabilities to even harvest the surplus. So I think for food banks, it's important. What I'm seeing that food banks are doing is getting close to these farmers, understanding the needs, understanding where they could contribute or they could support these farmers, but at the same time, help or enable these farmers to support the work that they're doing. So I believe that relationship management, like even similar to with corporate partners, is certainly key with when working with farmers. That said, there are obviously many benefits that food banks could potentially offer to this to farmers who donate to the food bank, but when the relationship is well maintained, farmers are more than always willing to give out any surplus donations. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We have a question also in terms of how much food kind of in the GFN network, which comprises 63 different partners at the local level, is being directed towards school meals. And Yvonne, thanks for that question. We don't have an exact kilo count, but there are about 34 food banking organizations in our network that are engaged in some way in distributing food at school. Most of that is either midday programs or breakfast programs. And so it's a key kind of strategy for most members. And Esther, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit just about BAMEX and the school meal programs that you have, and what you're seeing in terms of how that priority plays into the overall organization strategy.
Well, yes, sure. We have a project that is called backpack schools, backpack meals, yeah. And we give the food not only for the kids, but also for the family on the weekend. So we guarantee the nutrition for all the family. And the results in these cases are great. All the children raises their weight, their notes at school, and we help all the family. So I think it's a great experience, that project. As I said, it's the most important thing to change generation is to feed the children in the earliest years of their lives.
Yeah,
And yeah, we also work with Calanova on healthy breakfast, of course.
I think for those that are joining that are familiar with U.S. food banking, the backpack program is really a hallmark of I think food banking also in the United States, and so it's terrific to see how some of these things can be adapted across countries. I wanted to just answer one more question related to GFN coverage, and then I think we are getting to the end of our time, and I want to make sure that Whitney has a chance to close us out. But one of our colleagues had asked about kind of GFN's relationship with food banks in the United States. So GFN was founded in 2006 by 4 networks: Feeding America, Food Banks Canada, Red Argentina, and Bancos de Alimentos Mexico, or BAMEX. And today we maintain a collaborative partnership with Feeding America. We have a person from Feeding America that serves on our board of directors. But because Feeding America is such a strong and vibrant network and has very developed in terms of its work in the United States, GFN focuses all of its work outside of the US. However, we are really grateful to our Feeding America and Feeding America Food Bank colleagues just for being engaged globally, sharing best practices and knowledge and the like with the rest of the world. So I hope that answers your question, Debbie, on that. With that, I really want to thank Fenny, Esther, and Stephanie just for being with us today and sharing your experiences. And we just feel so fortunate to be able to work with all of you and learn from you. And thanks for joining us. And with that, I want to invite my colleague Whitney back, and she is going to kind of give us some final remarks and close.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you all. Like Lisa said, it has been so wonderful sharing the space with you. We are so grateful for your time. We know that you could have chosen to spend it in a multitude of ways, and we're just happy to have your time with us today. So obviously, this is just the beginning. This is just scratching the surface of all the incredible work that is happening across the board at GFN as it relates to agricultural recovery, and we would love to invite you in to learn more. We would love to continue the conversation with you and hear from you directly about what things really resonated. If there are any threads you'd like to pull together and explore more deeply, we couldn't do this work without you. So we are really wanting to extend an invitation to join us, to get curious and learn more with us as we work to expand this critical aspect of our programming. And just want to thank you again. So please get in touch with your relationship manager here at GFN if you have one. If you don't, you can reach out to me personally. My email is wsmith@foodbanking.org. You can, yeah, thank you. Here it is right on the screen. You can also find us online at foodbanking.org. You'll find lots more information there about all the different ways that we can support your critical work. So with all that being said, thank you again for your time. We can't wait to talk more with you, and looking forward to continuing the conversation. Have a wonderful rest of your week and happy holidays to everybody.